The relationship I had with my brother was a very strong one from a young age. He was a very fun guy, very effervescent, outward going, a bit naughty if I can say that, and we got on really, really well. Quite a sporty guy, definitely a fun guy, and pretty much a normal guy really. My brother's ill health started probably most obviously when he would have been 17, 18 at the time. We were on holiday. I remember it well, we're in Cornwall. Typical Cornish 2-week holiday, 1 or 2 good days, the rest of it fairly cool and windy and rainy. And I remember exactly what happened. It just having a quiet bite to eat in the evening, and suddenly, quite obviously, things weren't right. Couldn't put my finger on what it was, just distant, not with us, a bit vague. And I remember he didn't sleep for nights. I mean, it may have been 3 or 4 nights, I don't remember. But given what we've been doing in a day, which is typically, bouncing around on surfboards and, annoying everybody, as you do at that age, you'd think he'd sleep well. But I think as it all comes back, he often used to, nip briefly down to the pub, playing a slot machine on his own for a while, sometimes with me, and then come back and not sleep. And that was a good sign that something wasn't right, because that's just certainly wasn't him. He was a big sleeper. He loved his bed, he loved his sleep, and he couldn't sleep. By the end of the holiday, it was obvious something was wrong. So I remember my dad took him back probably a day or 2 early, because we had 2 cars down at the time, and he said, look, I'm going to take him back, he's not right. And pretty shortly after that, he was kept in hospital for a fair period of time, certainly a number of weeks, possibly a bit more. Looked after him very well, and he was diagnosed as having schizophrenia. You don't see very far out, and you don't really know what's going to happen in the future. He went through, a pretty volatile period of time. I actually forget how long it was. I'll probably say 5, 7 years of pretty unpredictable behaviour. And so there's a strong degree of wariness, of caring, of wondering how best to handle it, but still wanting to be close, because I absolutely believe that you should love or continue to love the person. You might hate the illness, but to make that separation, I think, is really, really important. I mean, there's definitely a selfish bit in you that thinks, why? I'm just in my teens now, about to do the things that you probably do when you're 15, 16, 17, and there probably is a tiny little bit of me that sort of thought, well, what does this mean from here in terms of caring and looking after and home life, and what about me? I'm a brother as well. I decided to take a job rather than go the university route or the qualification route. Possibly a little bit of rebel in me. I want to earn some money and live on my own and get away from, this thing. Not to run away from the illness of my brother by any stretch, but just try and make a strong life for myself independently. And you just sort of, perhaps you grow a bit too old in some areas, but other areas you want a bit more of attention because your brother's got it all, and you're still quite young. So it probably impacted me in all sorts of mixed up ways, but always the consistent was, I wanted to remain close to my brother, because that bond from being younger was always there. So I think the other impact it has on you is just, perversely, although I'm younger than my brother, you become older than your brother, and you have to assume that responsibility and just generally be an older brother, and accept the fact, quite rightly, that there's things you're going to need to do to look after him. I think, firstly, routine for him is really important. I can't say this for everybody, but certainly with him it is. If you break wildly from the routine, it definitely sets him back. So he needs to know probably each day what the next day brings, and probably a bit further out than that. Always make a point of ringing him. Never as much as I should do, but enough and quite frequently. We have good chats on the phone, 5 to 10 minutes is enough, and you can hear through the phone call, probably nothing to do with the fact it's me ringing, but it picks him up. Of course, you need to understand the illness. I think that is a core basic that's a given. But also I think there's a degree of understanding the person, which is probably just as important. And I'm a great believer that because he's not able to work, he spends a lot of time on his own. When you're on your own, you think. When you think, you get anxious. When you get anxious, you hear voices. When he's busier and he's got things on, people coming in to see him, he's doing stuff, he's got things to watch, his mind's elsewhere. Just all the support around him, including myself, to make sure that his day is focused on getting up, having his 3 meals, having a decent day, being at peace, if you like, and watching the programmes he wants to watch and seeing the people he wants to see, but take all the other complications away from him. Rethink Mental Illness got in touch with me and said, look, we're thinking about developing this, what do you think? So I had a few conversations around that. Personally, I think it's an excellent idea, and I know it's working really well, and I think the pluses that come from it, firstly, is it gives family and possibly to a lesser extent friends of people who've got schizophrenia a chance to talk openly. I was fortunate, I had a family that pretty much understood the illness. Tomorrow, it's someone else who doesn't, and they haven't got a clue. It hits them hard. Could hit them young, could hit them at any age. Who do you turn to? What do you do? Who do you ask? Who tells you about the various things you need to know? And that network, well, I'm sure grow, is increasingly important, is a really good idea. I think it's timely, I think it's right, and I think it will help an enormous amount of people.